Snow piled against the porches and mailboxes of the quiet American suburb, muffling every sound as the Harmons' moving truck rumbled into the cul-de-sac. The old two-story house waiting for them looked hunched, like it had been holding its breath through too many winters. Inside, the air felt sharp and cold, cold that crept into gloves, sleeves, bones, all except for one place. At the end of the upstairs hallway stood a narrow door, paint cracked like dry riverbeds. Warm air seeped from beneath it, heavy and moist, as if someone was pressed against the other side, breathing slow and steady. Mrs. Harmon placed her hand on the doorknob and jerked back. "It's hot," she whispered. "Not warm, hot." Mr. Harmon frowned, half amused, half unsettled. Old houses hold heat weirdly sometimes. But when he pushed the door open, both parents froze. The small room, bare walls, a single window rimmed with frost, radiated heat like a living thing. Not furnace heat, not sunshine, something intimate, almost humid, something that felt like breath on the back of your neck. Little Ella stepped in before they could stop her. She giggled, her boots crunching on the thawing floorboards. "It's like summer in here." A bead of condensation slid down the wallpaper, even though the rest of the house was freezing. That night, the Harmons tried to settle in. Wind scraped against the siding, ice shifted on the roof. Nothing unusual for winter. But somewhere around 2 a.m., the noises changed. From inside the walls came a soft, wet slap, 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 like bare feet walking along damp tile, slow, unhurried, close. Mr. Harmon sat up, heart pounding. He held his breath. Another step, then another. The footsteps stopped directly behind the wall that bordered Ella's room. In the morning, the house was silent again, except for the floorboards near the staircase, where the frost had melted into a line of small, perfect footprints, bare feet, child-sized. They led one after another toward Ella's bedroom door, and ended there, as if something had walked in without bothering to come back out. By the second morning, the warm room at the end of the hall had become a silent argument in the Harmon household. Mr. Harmon insisted it was a ventilation quirk. Mrs. Harmon kept checking the thermostat every hour like it might confess something. And Ella, she drifted toward the room as if it were calling her by name. When her mother found her sitting cross-legged on the thawed floorboards, hands in her lap, staring at nothing, she felt a chill that didn't come from winter. "Sweetheart, breakfast is ready." Ella didn't blink. "He's not hungry," she murmured. Mrs. Harmon forced a smile. "Who isn't?" "The boy," Ella said simply, tapping the floor. "He likes the warm." That was enough to pull her away. Later, while unpacking in the hallway, Mr. Harmon paused. Something brushed past him, a puff of warm air, like a sigh exhaled inches from his ear. He spun around, expecting Ella. No one. He pressed his palm to the wall near the warm room. It pulsed faintly beneath his touch, almost like there was a heartbeat trapped inside the plaster. That night, the footsteps returned, louder, closer, wet slaps echoing between the studs as if someone wandered aimlessly, dragging their souls along the wood. Around 3 a.m., a soft thump came from Ella's room, then another. Mrs. Harmon rushed in, flicking on the light. Ella stood facing the wall, hand pressed against the wallpaper, fingertips glistening with condensation. "It's okay," the girl whispered to the wall. "You don't have to be sad." Her mother's throat tightened. "Ella, come back to bed." Ella smiled an odd, distant smile. "He misses his family." The next morning, Mrs. Harmon found something new, the footprints. Only now they didn't stop at Ella's door. They stood inside her room, damp, sinking slightly into the old rug, perfectly shaped, perfectly spaced, as if someone small had wandered in circles around her bed, then vanished. No exit prints, no melted trail back out. Only a single barefoot path leading toward the warm room and disappearing right into its wall. The basement light flickered the first time Mr. Harmon pulled its chain. The whole space smelled of dust sealed in place for decades, dry, undisturbed, almost brittle. Cardboard boxes were stacked against the far wall, sagging with age, the ink on their labels washed to blurry ghosts. He wasn't looking for trouble, just the toolbox, something normal, something that didn't involve warm rooms or phantom footprints. But when he tugged one of the old boxes forward, the bottom gave out, spilling its contents across the concrete floor. Children's drawings, hundreds of them. Most were simple, stick figures, crooked houses, smiling suns. But the deeper he sifted, the stranger they became. The colors darkened, the shapes distorted. One image showed a small boy standing in a room with wallpaper patterned with faded toy trains, the same wallpaper upstairs. Behind the boy was a tall black shape leaning over him, not touching, just watching. Another drawing showed a series of footprints leading into a wall and not coming out. Mr. Harmon felt a twinge in his chest. He wasn't superstitious, but something about the drawings felt wrong. Not the childish clumsiness, something else, a heaviness, a loneliness that pressed down like thick air. At the very bottom of the pile, he found a small journal. The last few pages were smeared, but one sentence was still clear. "The warm place only feels warm when it wants something." He snapped the journal shut, trying to quiet the unease gnawing at him. Upstairs, a sudden bang echoed through the house, like a door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. He froze. Then he heard Ella's voice drifting from the hallway above, soft and sing-song. "He's awake now." The words didn't sound frightened. They sounded welcoming. When he climbed the basement stairs and reached the landing, he found the warm room's door wide open. Mrs. Harmon stood inside, bracing her arms against the doorframe, staring at something on the floor, something that made her breath hitch. The floorboards, freshly warm, almost steaming, were marked with a new set of wet footprints, small, child-sized, and this time there were two sets. Mrs. Harmon couldn't move at first. Two sets of footprints glistened on the warm, sweating floorboards. One set smaller than Ella's, and the other only slightly larger, as if belonging to an older child. The prints overlapped in odd patterns, circling the room, pausing in corners where the air shimmered like heat above asphalt. "Ella," she whispered, barely trusting her own voice. "Were you in here? With someone?" Ella stood in the doorway, her hair mussed from sleep, her pajamas damp at the cuffs. She shook her head. "No, Mom, he didn't want me to come in this time." Mrs. Harmon felt her chest tighten, the room choking her with warm, humid air. "Who?" "The boy and his brother." A chill, impossible in that room, rippled through her spine.
Later that day, while her husband disposed of the drawings in the basement, Mrs. Harmon lingered near the hallway that connected all the upstairs rooms. She kept catching the sensation of being watched, like someone's face hovered inches from her shoulder, disappearing when she turned. By late afternoon, the house grew unnaturally quiet. No wind, no pipes shifting, no distant hum from appliances. It was the kind of silence that felt purposeful, like the house was holding its breath again. Then came the tapping. Soft at first, rhythmic, a slow tuck, tuck, tuck from behind the walls of the warm room. She pressed her ear against the wallpaper. The heat stung her cheek, but she stayed. The tapping morphed into dragging, a faint shuffle, something sliding upward inside the wall until it reached ear height. Then a whisper. She jerked backward so fast she nearly fell. It hadn't been words, just breath, a long exhale, warm enough to fog the wallpaper. That night, Mr. Harmon tried once more to be rational. Maybe it's animals, he said, or old vents, or... But his voice faltered when they heard wet footsteps again, traveling the hallway right outside their bedroom door. Slap, slap, slap. The steps paused. Something pressed down on the hallway floorboards, heavy, shifting its weight. The wood creaked as if someone were leaning against the door. And then from the other side, a small, hurried whisper. "Let us in." The air in the room went suffocatingly still. Neither parent dared breathe. In the morning, the footprints reappeared. More this time. Not just 2 sets. 4. The Harmons stopped pretending things were normal. After the morning, they found 4 sets of footprints wandering aimlessly across the upstairs landing. They trailed in circles, smudged into each other, as if whatever made them had been pacing restlessly while the family slept. Mr. Harmon grabbed a flashlight and toolbox with the stubborn determination of someone clinging to the last threads of logic. "There's something in that wall," he muttered. "Some animal nest, maybe a leak making the boards swell." But when he pressed his palm to the warm room's back wall, the familiar heat pulsed beneath it, slow, rhythmic, unmistakably alive. Mrs. Harmon stood behind him, arms wrapped tightly around her chest. "Don't open it," she whispered. "The wall isn't normal." He forced a laugh, but it cracked halfway out. "Walls don't breathe." This one did. As he drove the pry bar into the plaster, Ella appeared in the doorway, eyes wide and strangely calm. "He's scared," she said. "He doesn't want you to hurt him." Mr. Harmon paused mid-swing. "Ella, honey, no one's in here." But the wall throbbed. Once, twice. He stepped back, nearly dropping the pry bar. The pulse quickened beneath the surface, a frantic flutter like something trapped inside realized it was about to be exposed. Then came the sound, soft at first, like fingers brushing against fabric, but it grew sharper, more deliberate. Scratching, long, dragging scratches from the other side of the wall, tracing the exact height of a child's reach. Mrs. Harmon covered her mouth. "Stop, please!" But something else stopped him, the sudden smell, thick, damp, like warm soil turned over after rain, the same smell that clung to the footprints every morning. The scratching halted. Silence stretched tight across the room. Then, a single knock from inside the wall. Slow, clear, intentionally spaced. Knock. 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 Ella whispered, "They're asking to come out." Mr. Harmon felt ice crawl under his skin, despite the humid heat enveloping the room. "They?" he echoed, barely breathing. Ella nodded. There used to be 2. Now there are 4, and they don't fit in there anymore. The wall pulsed again, hard enough to rattle the picture frames behind them. Something inside was pushing back, growing restless, growing bold, and for the first time since moving in, Mr. Harmon wondered whether the house had ever truly been empty at all.
That night, the house refused to settle. Every beam, every floorboard seemed to shift with a slow, uneasy rhythm, as if matching the heartbeat pulsing behind the warm room's wall. Even the snow outside felt wrong, melting around the foundation in perfect, child-sized patterns. By 1 a.m., the temperature in the hallway had climbed to a humid, suffocating heat. The air stuck to the skin, thick enough to taste. Mrs. Harmon cracked the bedroom door just to breathe cooler air, but what drifted toward her wasn't a draft. It was whispering. Soft, layered, dozens of voices stacked atop each other like overlapping echoes. She froze. The warm room door stood wide open at the end of the hall. Its wallpaper glistened with condensation, and on the floor, water pooled outward in thin ripples as though something inside had spilled over. "Tom," she hissed, shaking her husband awake. "They're out!" He grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the dresser, not for spirits or ghosts, for burglars. But tonight he had no idea what the house held. As they stepped into the hall, the wet footprints appeared, fresh, forming one by one as if invisible children were running in circles. Some prints were tiny, some long and narrow. They darted toward Ella's room. "Ella!" Mrs. Harmon sprinted ahead, throwing the door open, and stopped dead. Ella wasn't asleep. She was sitting upright in bed, eyes open but unfocused, her breath fogging the warm air around her. "It's okay," she murmured. "They're almost through." Behind the wall, opposite her bed, a bulge pushed forward, a smooth swelling under the wallpaper, shaped like a shoulder, then an arm, then a small, indistinct head pressing against the surface. The wallpaper stretched taut, groaning. Mr. Harmon raised the bat. "Stay away from my daughter!" But the wall responded first. A crack tore down the wallpaper. Plaster split. A rush of hot, damp air burst out, carrying the smell of old soil and old water. Behind it came a sound like many hands scraping wood. The swelling retreated, quickly, like something startled back into darkness. Then silence. A deep, waiting silence. Ella exhaled softly and lay back down as if nothing had happened. Mrs. Harmon touched her cheek. It was warm, too warm. "Mom," Ella whispered, fading into sleep. "I told them not yet." "Not yet for what?" her mother choked out. Ella didn't answer. But down the hall, from the warm room, came a final whisper, one voice this time, clear as a breath against the ear. "Soon."
By morning, the Harmons had reached a silent agreement. They needed answers. Not comfort, not theories, answers. Mr. Harmon found a local contractor willing to come on short notice, a gruff, middle-aged man named Dwyer, who specialized in old places with problems. He showed up with a tool bag, a thermal camera, and the kind of tired eyes that had seen too many houses with too many stories. The moment he stepped inside, his expression changed. "Feels wrong," he muttered, rubbing his forearm as though brushing off a static charge. Heat pockets like this shouldn't exist in a structure this old. Mrs. Harmon led him upstairs. The warm room door was shut, but heat pulsed through the wood like something breathing on the other side. Dwyer pressed his hand to it and flinched. Jesus, it's hotter than a boiler in there. It isn't connected to the heating, Mr. Harmon said quietly. Dwyer scanned the wall with his thermal camera. The display glowed bright red, no, white, the highest possible temperature reading, right where the wall had bulged the night before. He frowned, then frowned deeper. That doesn't make sense. What doesn't? Mrs. Harmon asked. He tapped the screen. There's something behind this wall, something radiating heat like crazy, but the studs don't match any standard layout. It's like someone rebuilt this room from scratch. Mr. Harmon swallowed. Rebuilt for what? Dwyer didn't answer. He just kept scanning. And then he found it, a faint outline behind the plaster, a square shape, small, hidden between the studs. A crawl cavity, he said under his breath. Why in hell would anyone seal that off? Mrs. Harmon's heartbeat quickened. Can you open it? I can, he said slowly, but I want to know what I'm opening into. Before they could speak, a sound drifted from the warm room, soft, rhythmic tapping. Dwyer stiffened. Is someone in there? No, Mrs. Harmon whispered. Not someone. Ella appeared at the end of the hallway, hugging her stuffed rabbit. She stared at Dwyer with a sad, almost apologetic expression. They don't like you, she said quietly. Dwyer forced a chuckle. Kids say the creepiest things, huh? But Ella shook her head. They said you're going to break their home. A deep thud echoed from the warm room's wall, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. Dwyer stepped back. Okay, that's it. I'm getting my saw. He moved toward the stairs, then froze mid-step. The hallway floorboards behind him dipped, as if someone small had taken a step, then another, then two more, quick and wet. Dwyer spun around, face pale. There's something on the thermal cam, he rasped, staring at the screen. Something moving. What does it look like? Mr. Harmon whispered. Dwyer swallowed hard. Little hands. Dwyer didn't wait for permission. The moment he saw those small shifting shapes on the thermal camera, he snapped the device shut and marched toward the warm room like a man choosing the only door in a burning house. Stand back, he barked, though his voice trembled. If there's a cavity, I'm opening it. Whatever's inside, animal, mold, bad insulation, we're ending this today. But nothing in his tone suggested he believed any of those explanations anymore. He jammed the blade of his oscillating saw into the wall. The room shuddered with the first cut, heat blooming outward as if the wall flinched. A low groan rippled through the studs. The lights flickered. Ella covered her ears. "You're hurting them." Mrs. Harmon pulled her close, whispering, "Sweetheart, it's okay." But Ella shook her head violently. "No, no, no, they're scared." The wall's surface began to sweat. Droplets of warm moisture slid down the wallpaper like tears. Dwyer kept cutting. On the third pass of the saw, the blade hit something hollow. The tone changed, a dull, echoing thump. He carved a square outline and pried the section of plaster free. Hot air burst out, thick and wet, as if from lungs exhaling after a long hold. Behind the opening lay a cramped space no taller than a child, its walls stained, its air shimmering with heat. Inside sat a pile of old fabric, blankets, clothes, something that might once have been a mattress, and, scattered across the floor, little footprints, pressed deep into the dusty wood. Not old, fresh. Mr. Harmon staggered back. "My God!" Dwyer leaned closer, shining his flashlight in, and froze. In the farthest corner, half hidden beneath a tattered quilt, was a shape.
small, curled, still, a child-sized shape. "Don't," Mrs. Harmon warned, grabbing his arm. "Don't touch it." But the shape moved, not with life, with breath. A slow, rising expansion of the chest, then a fall, then another, as if whatever lay beneath the quilt was sleeping peacefully in the scalding darkness. Dwyer stumbled away, voice cracking. There's a kid in there. How is that even—" Ella stepped forward, her expression soft, almost tender. "That's the oldest one. He sleeps so the younger ones have room." The quilt shifted. Something underneath it pressed upward, small fingers outlined against the fabric. The house's temperature surged. The floorboards around them moaned, bowing slightly as heat radiated through every plank. Dwyer backed toward the hallway. "Nope, no, I'm not dying in this damn house." But before he could take another step, a sharp bang slammed through the cavity, like palms hitting wood from inside. Then another, then many, tiny fists pounding in frantic unison. Ella closed her eyes. "They're awake now," she said, "all of them." The pounding from inside the cavity grew violent. The wall trembled, each hit sending vibrations through the floorboards like a second heartbeat under the house. Dust drifted from the ceiling in soft clouds. Even the air felt strained, tightening with every thud. Dwyer dropped his flashlight. "We're leaving, right now. Grab the kid and get out." But the moment he stepped toward the stairs, the house shifted, an unmistakable lurch, like something massive settling its weight beneath them. The warm room door slammed shut with a sound sharp enough to rattle their teeth. Mr. Harmon grabbed the knob. It burned his palm. "Jesus, it's locked!" "No," Ella whispered behind him. "They're holding it." The temperature soared. Sweat slid down the walls in thick trails. The cavity pulsed with red heat, glowing faintly like embers beneath the plaster. Then came the sound. Not pounding, not scratching, breathing. Heavy, labored, multiplying. Several small chests inhaling and exhaling in perfect rhythm, as if an entire invisible crowd gathered behind the wall. Dwyer cursed under his breath and raised his saw again. "I'm cutting the whole damn thing out." But before the blade touched the plaster, the cavity wall bulged outward, swelling rapidly, as if something inside pressed its face, its hands, its bodies forward at once. Mrs. Harmon screamed. Dwyer stumbled back. Ella only watched, calm but pale. The wallpaper tore open down the center. A flood of scorching air burst into the room, hot enough to blister paint, hot enough to wither the edges of the doorframe. The lights blew out with a pop. Darkness swallowed everything except the faint orange glow radiating from the split wall. In that glow, shapes moved, small, countless, crawling over each other like children scrambling to climb out of a too small space. Mr. Harmon yanked his family behind him. "Stay back! Don't let them touch!" But the shapes didn't come forward. They paused at the opening, gathered in a tight cluster, their outlines flickering like heat mirages. Small heads, thin limbs, bodies shaped like children, but impossibly wrong, bent as if they had grown in walls, not in air. Then one stepped forward, a silhouette no taller than Ella. Its hand reached out, trembling, fingers too long, joints bowed. It pointed toward Ella and spoke. 4 voices layered into one, cracked and breathless, like lungs not meant for speech. "She can open the rest." Ella's grip on her mother loosened. "They want me to help. They've been waiting since before we came." Mrs. Harmon pulled her close. "No, you're not going anywhere." But Ella's eyes glowed faintly in the orange light, reflecting the heat like coals. "I promised them," she whispered. Behind the wall, more hands pressed through the plaster, more voices whispered, and somewhere deep in the house, below them, above them, inside the studs and floors, the structure groaned as if waking up, as if opening further.
The house shook with a deep rising moan, timbers flexing, nails straining, as though the entire structure were inhaling after years of holding its breath. The warmth that once radiated from a single room now seeped through every corner, turning the hallway into a pulsing throat of heat. Dwyer stumbled backward, eyes wide, saw hanging limp in his hand. "This place is alive," he whispered. "Get the kid and run, now!" But Ella didn't run. She stepped toward the torn cavity, toward the glowing silhouettes packed inside like desperate shadows waiting at a door. The air rippled around her, bending with the heat, humming with low, childlike murmurs. Mrs. Harmon clutched her daughter's wrist. "Ella, please." "They don't want to hurt us," Ella said softly, her voice growing strangely distant, as if echoing from somewhere deeper. "They just want to finish what they started." "What is that supposed to mean?" Mr. Harmon rasped. The cluster of small, distorted figures shifted. One leaned forward, its outline quivering with every breath. When it spoke, the voice was clearer now, more human, more whole. "We stayed behind because they didn't let us leave." Dwyer's face drained of color. "Who didn't let you—" The floorboards beneath them answered first. Footsteps, heavy, dragging, thudded across the lower level. Not the wet slaps of the children, not the light, frantic taps from the walls. These steps were slow, deliberate, adult. Mrs. Harmon's breath hitched. "There's someone else here?" The children's silhouettes recoiled in unison, as though something much larger shifted behind them, deeper in the warm, beating space. Ella turned to her parents. "He's coming, the one who kept them here." A deep groan tremored through the entire house. The staircase creaked under immense weight. Something vast began climbing. Dwyer grabbed Ella's arm, guiding her back. "We have to go out the window." But the moment he reached for the sill, the wood swelled shut with a violent jerk, sealing the frame, as if the house clenched its jaw. No escape. The warm room door slammed open so hard it cracked the wall. Heat roared out, scorching, blinding, but within the brightness another shadow formed, tall, misshapen, shoulders bent in unnatural angles. Its footsteps echoed like hammers on wet earth. Ella didn't scream. She stepped in front of her family, small hands balled into fists. "You made them stay," she said to the approaching shape. "You made the house keep them." The figure paused. The children inside the cavity whimpered. Even the walls shuddered. Then Ella's voice deepened, layered with many others. "Not anymore." A blast of heat surged from the cavity, pure, blinding white. The children's silhouettes stretched outward, swelling, merging, then bursting forward as one enormous wave of burning air. The tall figure staggered back. The house itself groaned in agony, boards splintering, plaster cracking like eggshells. In the chaos, Mr. Harmon grabbed Ella, pulling her toward the hallway, just as every window in the house shattered outward, expelling heat in a single deafening scream. And then, silence, cold, darkness. The Harmons awoke outside, lying in fresh snow. The house stood still behind them, quiet, dark, unheated, no glow, no warmth. Just an abandoned shell. Dwyer sat in the snow, shaking uncontrollably. "It's empty," he whispered. "Whatever was in there, it left." Ella looked at the house one last time. "They're gone now," she said softly. "All of them. They're free now."
But as the family started toward their car, Mrs. Harmon noticed something in the frost beside the porch. Footprints, small, bare, one set, trailing away from the house and ending right where Ella stood.